Love survived in the smallest lies first. The coffee maker beeped at 6:15 every morning, always 15 minutes before his alarm, because he liked waking to the smell already filling the bedroom. I had programmed it that way 3 years ago, on a Tuesday morning when he said he loved me for understanding him. The sound became our routine, the dark beans in the cabinet, the ceramic mug with the chipped handle that he refused to replace, the way he always kissed my temple before taking that first sip. These were the facts of our marriage. Small, true, unremarkable. Until they weren't. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears. One small truth at a time. The evening it began, I was folding his shirts on the bed. White Oxford, light blue, the gray one with the faint stain near the collar that I could never quite remove. He traveled for work, Cleveland, Cincinnati, sometimes Detroit, always Tuesday through Thursday, home by Friday afternoon. "My boss is demanding," he'd say, laughing but not really laughing, and I'd nod because I understood that work was work, that ambition required sacrifice, that marriages survived by allowing each other space to breathe. Sarah texted me at 7:43 p.m., 3 laughing emojis, then, "OMG, you have to see this bio. Who writes this?" The screenshot loaded slowly. Dating app interface, the familiar swipe right design everyone jokes about but secretly knows too well. The bio was ridiculous. Something about hiking and craft beer and looking for someone who can keep up. The kind of empty poetry men think sounds adventurous. I started typing a response, some joke about toxic masculinity and outdoor hobbies, when the photo fully rendered. My husband, in our kitchen, wearing the navy sweater I'd bought him last Christmas. The phone felt heavier. My thumb hovered over the screen. I zoomed in. The backsplash tiles we'd chosen together, the pendant light he'd installed crooked, the small wooden cutting board visible in the corner. The one shaped like Ohio that his mother had given us. Every detail correct. Every detail ours. "Where did you see this?" I typed. Deleted it. Typed again. "Is this recent?" "Just now. I'm dying. The bio says he's a marketing executive seeking authentic connection. Like, bro." My hands were steady. That surprised me. I should have been shaking, but instead I felt very calm, very far away, like watching myself from the corner of the ceiling. I could hear the shower running upstairs. He'd be down in 10 minutes, hair damp, wearing the joggers he only wore at home, asking what I wanted to order for dinner because Thursday was always takeout night. "Haha, yeah, wild," I replied to Sarah. Then I opened the app store. I didn't know then that this would be the last night I slept next to him without counting his breaths. He came downstairs smelling like his cedar soap, the same one he'd used since we met, and kissed the top of my head while reaching for the takeout menu magnetized to the fridge. "Thai or Indian?" he asked, and his voice sounded exactly like it always did. Warm, a little tired, familiar as my own pulse. "Thai," I said. "The usual." He ordered while I sat very still on the couch, laptop open, pretending to scroll through work emails. The dating app took 4 minutes to download. I created a profile using an old photo from college, cropped so my face was obscured, shoulders up, anonymous. I named her Jessica. 34, marketing coordinator, new to the area, looking for something real. The algorithm showed me men within 10 miles. I set the distance to 50, then 100. I changed the age range, adjusted the preferences, refreshed until the screen filled with faces I didn't recognize. I was looking for him, of course. Searching for my own husband in a catalog of strangers. He sat beside me with his phone, scrolling through something, probably work emails, probably nothing. "Food'll be here in 40, he said. His leg touched mine. We'd sat exactly like this 1,000 times. "How was Cleveland?" I asked. "Fine. Same hotel, same client meetings. Jim's being impossible about the Q4 numbers." Jim was his boss. Jim was always impossible. Jim was demanding. "But I think we're close to closing the Brennan account, so." "That's good," I said. My voice sounded normal. I was performing normalcy. He was performing normalcy. We were both very good at our parts. I didn't find his profile that night, or the next day, or the day after that. By the time the leaves changed, I had refined Jessica into someone believable. I gave her hobbies pulled from lifestyle magazines, yoga, true crime podcasts, weekend farmers markets. I made her aspirational but approachable, the kind of woman men thought they deserved. I swiped left on everyone. I wasn't looking for matches, only evidence. He left for Cincinnati on Tuesday morning. The coffee maker beeped at 6:15. He kissed my temple. He said he loved me, and maybe he did. Love and lies are not opposites. I was learning this slowly, the way you learn that a house is sinking, incrementally through cracks that appear in new places each season. I changed Jessica's location to Cincinnati at 9 a.m. At 11:47, I found him. The same photo, the same bio, but the distance had changed. 8 miles away. The app had updated his location automatically, cheerfully, without knowing it was destroying someone's life in real time. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. 8 miles. I clicked to his full profile. His listed location was the Cincinnati area. 4 more photos, one at a restaurant I didn't recognize, one in a hotel lobby, one outdoors, somewhere green and generic, one blurred action shot that showed nothing but confidence. Under what I'm looking for, genuine connection, someone who doesn't play games, chemistry matters. I screenshotted everything. I didn't know what I would do with the evidence, but I knew I needed to document the truth before it slipped away, before I convinced myself I'd imagined it. The house sounded larger that day. Some weeks later, I created a second profile. This one was named Madison, 29, graphic designer, recently single, based in Detroit. I gave her different photos, a different personality, adventurous, spontaneous, the kind of woman who'd say yes to last-minute plans. I made her everything I imagined he wanted but couldn't find in a wife who'd memorized his coffee routine. He traveled to Detroit the following week. Madison matched with him at 2:34 p.m. on Wednesday. His first message arrived 6 minutes later. "Hey, your profile made me smile. What brings you to the app?" I sat in our bedroom in the chair where I used to read while he slept, and I stared at those words on my phone. The same phone we shared a cellular plan on. The same account that listed both our names. He was asking a stranger what brought her to a dating app while his wife sat in their bedroom, breathing very carefully, trying to decide whether to vomit or scream or simply cease to exist. I didn't respond immediately. Madison was the kind of woman who didn't seem desperate. Madison had a life. Madison wasn't checking her phone every 30 seconds, waiting for a husband to confess. An hour later, I replied, "Honestly, tired of the games, looking for something real." His response was instant. "Same. It's exhausting out here, but your profile seems different, more genuine." We messaged for 3 days. He told Madison he was in Detroit for work, that he traveled a lot, that it made dating difficult but not impossible. He asked about her job, her hobbies, her favorite restaurants. He was charming, attentive. He remembered details she'd mentioned in passing and referenced them later. He used the same conversational rhythm I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago when we'd met through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue and he'd made me laugh by doing impressions of people we didn't know. He never mentioned a wife. On Friday, he suggested drinks. Madison said she was busy. He said, "Maybe next time I'm in town." "Maybe," Madison replied. He came home that evening, kissed my temple, asked what I wanted for dinner. "Thai," I said. "The usual." In the quiet that followed, I became an expert in someone else's life. I tracked him through Jessica, Madison, and eventually Emma, a third profile, 28, based in Cleveland. Emma matched with him on his next trip. He used different photos with her, different angles, but the same bio, the same promise of genuine connection, the same performance of authenticity. He messaged all 3 personas differently, adjusting his approach like he was split-testing marketing campaigns. With Jessica, he was intellectual, sending articles and asking thoughtful questions. With Madison, playful and spontaneous. With Emma, vulnerable, talking about the pressures of work, the loneliness of hotel rooms. I saved everything. Screenshots organized by date, by location, by persona. I created a folder on my laptop titled Q4 Budget Notes and filled it with evidence of my husband's careful, methodical betrayal. At home, nothing changed. The coffee maker still beeped at 6:15. He still kissed my temple. We still ordered Thai on Thursdays. But I stopped programming the coffee maker 15 minutes early. I let him wake to silence and set it himself, and he never noticed the difference. Small rebellions. Small admissions that I was already leaving while still sleeping in his bed. The confrontation happened in our kitchen on a Sunday afternoon. No dramatics, no slamming doors. He was washing dishes, and I was sitting at the counter with my laptop open, looking at the folder I'd labeled Q4 budget notes. The pendant light he'd installed crooked through uneven shadows across the backsplash tiles. "Can I ask you something?" I said. He didn't turn around. "Sure. Are you sleeping with someone else?" His hands stopped moving in the soapy water. He stood very still, a glass in one hand, sponge in the other. After a long moment, he set the glass in the drying rack, carefully, like it might shatter if handled wrong. "No," he said, then quieter. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I saw your dating profile." He turned then. His face did something complicated. Surprise, calculation, something that looked almost like relief. "That's old," he said immediately. "From before we met. I forgot I even had it." "It updates your location in real time." Silence. "Every Tuesday through Thursday, you're in Cincinnati or Cleveland or Detroit. And so is your profile, 8 miles away, 12 miles away, active within the hour." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know what you're talking about." I turned the laptop around, showed him the screenshots, Jessica's conversation, Madison's messages, Emma's late-night exchanges about loneliness and connection, dates, timestamps, locations, everything organized, labeled, documented. "You matched with 3 different women," I said. My voice sounded steady, clinical. "They're all me." He stared at the screen for a long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. "I never met anyone," he said. "I swear, it was just talking. I never—" "You told Madison you'd buy her drinks next time you were in town." "But I didn't? I wouldn't? What's the difference?" He didn't have an answer for that, strategized narrative progression through emotional devastation toward ambiguous resolution. "I'm building well here. I have about 1,700 words so far. I need to continue through the fallout, reckoning, and legacy sections, maintaining the tone and reaching around 4,000 words. Let me continue with the aftermath, showing how the relationship changes, the quiet devastation, and eventually the understanding without resolution." I asked him to leave, but he didn't. He slept in the guest room for a week, then 2, then a month. We moved around each other, like roommates, polite and distant. He stopped traveling for work, or said he did. I stopped checking. I deleted Jessica, Madison, and Emma. I didn't need them anymore. The evidence existed in my laptop folder, in my memory, in the way I could no longer look at our kitchen without seeing his face in that dating app photo, smiling like a man who had nothing to hide. After that night, things happened in the wrong order. First came the practical conversations, the house, the accounts, who would keep the car we'd bought together. He wanted to fix things. He said it over and over, standing in doorways, sitting across from me at the kitchen table we'd found at an estate sale. I never touched anyone else. I never even tried. It was just attention, validation. I know that sounds pathetic, but it is pathetic, I said. Not cruelly, just factually. I love you. I believe you. Then why can't we? Because you loved me the whole time. That's the part I can't forgive. He didn't understand. Men rarely do. They think betrayal requires physical evidence, a body, a hotel room, proof of penetration. They don't understand that you can commit infidelity with words, with intention, with the simple act of presenting yourself as available to someone who isn't your wife. He never touched Madison, but he promised her authenticity. He never kissed Emma, but he confessed loneliness to her instead of to me. The betrayal wasn't in what he did. It was in what he offered to strangers that he'd stopped offering at home. Genuine connection, chemistry, something real. He'd been looking for me in other women. Years can pass inside a single evening, but they can also pass inside a single glance at ordinary objects. The coffee maker broke in November. I didn't replace it. I started buying coffee on my way to work, a new routine that required nothing of him, no consideration of his schedule or preferences. He noticed but didn't comment. We were both learning the language of absence. The navy sweater he'd worn in his dating profile stayed folded in his drawer. I never asked him to get rid of it. That felt too much like punishment, and punishment required caring about his behavior. I was past that. I was in the thick gray space where indifference feels like progress. He moved out in December. Not because I asked him to, but because living together had become archaeological. Every object a relic of who we used to be, every room a dig site revealing layers of former happiness. He took the coffee maker after all, though it was broken. I didn't ask why. Maybe he thought he could fix it. Maybe he needed to believe something could still be repaired. I kept the house. I kept the chipped mug, the crooked pendant light, the cutting board shaped like Ohio. I kept the bed where I'd folded his shirts that first evening before I knew that Sarah's text message would split my life into before and after. I slept on his side for a while, testing whether the mattress felt different there. It did, but only slightly. A body's weight doesn't leave much impression when it was never fully present to begin with. Some weeks later, or maybe months, time had become unreliable. I found a receipt in the pocket of a jacket he'd left behind. Not evidence of anything, just a coffee order from a shop in Cleveland. 2 lattes, 1 black coffee. The date was from last March, before I'd discovered anything, when I still believed that demanding bosses were the only thing keeping him away. 3 drinks. He'd told me he was traveling alone. I stood in the closet, holding that small slip of paper, and I realized I would never know the complete truth. There would always be receipts I hadn't found, conversations I hadn't intercepted, moments that existed only in his memory and someone else's. I could spend the rest of my life excavating our marriage, sifting through every trip, every late night, every time he'd said gym was being impossible. But the digging wouldn't change the foundation. It was already cracked when I bought the house. I threw the receipt away. I didn't need it. By the time the leaves changed again, I had created new routines that required nothing of anyone. I bought a small espresso machine. I learned to make coffee the way I liked it, which was different from how he took his. Lighter, sweeter, with foam that dissipated quickly but tasted like beginning again. I stopped ordering Thai on Thursdays. I stopped ordering anything on a schedule. I let hunger dictate meals, let impulse replace routine. The house felt smaller now, not larger. I'd been wrong about that. Absence doesn't expand a space. It condenses it, makes every corner more potent with memory. I could walk through the kitchen without thinking about his dating profile photo. Most days, anyway. Some evenings, when the light hit the backsplash a certain way, I'd remember standing there, watching him wash dishes, asking him if he was sleeping with someone else. The glass in his hand, the sponge. The careful way he set things down, like breaking something would prove his guilt. He texted occasionally, asking how I was, apologizing again, suggesting coffee, therapy, conversation. I responded politely, briefly. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires energy, and I'd spent all of mine creating fake women to catch a real husband in a lie he'd tell himself wasn't technically lying. Madison, Jessica, Emma. I'd murdered them all when I deleted the apps, erased the profiles, removed the evidence from my phone. But they lingered anyway, ghosts of women who'd never existed except as proof of something I already knew. That my husband was lonely, that loneliness doesn't care about vows, that people betray each other most thoroughly when they convince themselves they're not betraying anyone at all. In the quiet that followed, and it was quiet relentlessly so, I began to understand the architecture of our failure. It hadn't started with the dating profile. That was just where it became visible. It had started years earlier, in small moments I'd dismissed as normal marital entropy. The way he'd stopped asking about my day in any detail that required follow-up questions. The way I'd stopped telling him things that mattered, saving my real thoughts for friends, for coworkers, for anyone whose attention didn't feel like obligation. We'd maintained the performance of intimacy while quietly withdrawing from each other, building separate lives inside the same house, using the same coffee maker, sleeping in the same bed. He'd looked for connection on a dating app because he couldn't find it in our marriage. And I'd let him become a stranger because I'd convinced myself that comfort was the same as love. We were both guilty. We were both innocent. The truth contained multitudes. But only one of us had created a profile seeking genuine connection while wearing a sweater his wife had chosen. The reckoning came not in revelation, but in repetition. I'd replay our life together, but differently now. Scenes once sweet revealed hidden fissures. The time he'd been late coming home from Cleveland and blamed traffic. Had that been traffic, or had it been drinks with someone whose name I'd never know? The weekend he'd seemed distant, distracted, checking his phone more than usual. Had he been texting clients, or had he been crafting the perfect message to a stranger? Testing whether honesty could exist in deception? I'd never know. That was the cruelest part. I could investigate forever and never find the whole truth because the truth wasn't a thing you could excavate. It was a fog, and I'd been walking through it for years without realizing I couldn't see. I wondered sometimes if he'd met anyone before I caught him, if Madison and Jessica and Emma had real-world counterparts, if the coffee receipt was proof of something more than carelessness. But wondering felt like a trap, a way to keep myself tethered to a past that no longer needed my attention. So I stopped wondering. I stopped checking his social media, stopped asking mutual friends how he was doing, stopped performing any curiosity about his life. Not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. I was tired of being the detective in my own marriage, of treating love like a crime scene that required constant documentation. I let him become someone I used to know. By the time winter arrived again, I had almost forgotten what it felt like to wake up to the smell of coffee I hadn't made myself. Almost. Sarah texted me one evening in January, a year and 3 months after she'd sent me the screenshot that detonated my marriage. She was getting engaged. She wanted to meet for celebratory drinks. I said yes, and we sat in a bar downtown talking about venues and dresses and the small logistics of beginning a life with someone. "How are you doing?" she asked eventually, inevitably. "With everything?" "Better," I said. And it was true. I was sleeping through the night again. I was laughing at appropriate moments. I'd stopped thinking about him every hour and downgraded it to every day, which felt like progress. "Did you ever find out if he actually met up with anyone?" "No." "Does it matter?" I thought about that. The receipt in Cleveland, the 3 drinks, the years of business trips and demanding bosses and Tuesday through Thursday absences. The gap between what I knew and what I suspected would always exist, a space I could fill with paranoia or simply leave empty. "Not anymore," I said, and I meant it, or I was learning to mean it, or I was performing meaning until it became true. The difference felt less important than it once had. The house still stands on the same street, with the same crooked pendant light and the same backsplash tiles. I never fixed the light. I never replaced the tiles. They're evidence of nothing except that we lived here once, made choices together, built something that looked like permanence. Sometimes I make coffee in my small espresso machine and drink it standing at the counter, looking at the spot where he used to wash dishes. I don't feel angry anymore. I don't feel much of anything except a distant gratitude that I'm no longer performing normalcy for someone who stopped seeing me years before I stopped seeing him. I deleted the Q4 budget notes folder from my laptop last week. I didn't need it. The evidence existed whether I documented it or not, and documenting it was just another way to keep living in the past. He got married again last fall. I heard it from a mutual friend who didn't realize telling me would hurt. It didn't, though. Or it did, but only in the way old injuries ache when the weather changes. A distant throb, a memory of damage, but nothing acute, nothing I couldn't ignore. I hope she knows his coffee order. I hope he's different with her. I hope he isn't. Both outcomes feel equally irrelevant to my life. Late at night, when the world is still and I'm alone in a house that used to be ours, I sometimes think about Jessica and Madison and Emma, the women I created to catch a husband in a lie, the women who never existed except as mirrors, reflecting back what he wanted to see. I wonder if he thinks about them too. If he remembers the messages, the promises, the late-night exchanges about loneliness and connection. If he feels shame or just relief that it never went further, that I caught him before he could cross whatever line he'd drawn in his mind between acceptable and unforgivable. But mostly I don't wonder. Mostly I drink my coffee and read my books and make plans that require no one's approval but my own. I've started traveling, not for work, but for pleasure. I've been to Portland, to Austin, to Montreal. I go alone. I meet no one. I return home to a house that smells only like me, and that feels like the smallest, most profound victory. This is what I learned. Love doesn't die the way you think it will. It doesn't explode or disintegrate or vanish overnight. It erodes. It becomes routine, then obligation, then performance, then memory. And when you finally look up from folding laundry or washing dishes or programming the coffee maker, you realize you've been living with a stranger for years. Someone who wears your husband's face but doesn't speak your husband's language anymore. And maybe that's no one's fault. Maybe it's just what happens when two people stop paying attention, when comfort becomes complacency, when you choose the path of least resistance until you've worn a groove so deep you can't remember what it felt like to walk beside someone instead of simply parallel to them. Or maybe it was always his fault for seeking connection in the swipes of an app instead of the stillness of a morning kitchen. for confessing loneliness to strangers instead of the woman who knew his coffee order by heart. Both things can be true. Most truths contain their opposites. I still have the chipped mug. It sits in the cabinet above the new espresso machine, unused but present. Sometimes I take it down and hold it, feeling its familiar weight, remembering the morning he said he loved me for understanding him. I understood him perfectly. That was the problem. I understood that he was capable of keeping me close while looking elsewhere for what he couldn't name but knew was missing. And I understood eventually that I'd been doing the same thing, looking past him, through him, around him, seeing the marriage instead of the man, maintaining the structure instead of nurturing the foundation. We broke each other quietly, in 10,000 small ways, over 10,000 small days. The dating profile was just the place where it became impossible to ignore. Peace came disguised as exhaustion. I stopped fighting the truth. I stopped wishing it could be different. I accepted that some betrayals are too complicated for forgiveness, too mundane for rage. I let go of the marriage without ceremony, without closure, without any of the dramatic resolutions stories are supposed to provide. One day I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about him in 3 whole days. The week after, it was 5 days. The month after that, a full week. The spaces between remembering grew longer, and the remembering itself grew softer, less sharp, more like a story that happened to someone else. I don't know if he checks dating apps anymore. I don't know if his new wife knows about Jessica or Madison or Emma. I don't know if he's learned to be honest or if he's just learned to hide better. I don't need to know. That's how this ends. Not with understanding, but with acceptance. Not with forgiveness, but with distance. Not with closure, but with the slow, undeniable relief of no longer needing answers to questions I've stopped asking. He said his boss was demanding. That part, at least, was true. But the boss he was talking about was loneliness. And loneliness demands everything. Your attention, your honesty, your small rebellions against the ordinary life you've built with someone who used to feel like home. I never stopped loving him. I just stopped waiting for him to tell me the truth.